Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first story is titled, My Aunt Was One of Two Kids My Grandparents Had. My mother was the solar opposite to my aunt. She worked from the age of 12 in my grandfather's shop, never asked for anything, and eventually managed to start her own business. My aunt never held down a job till the age of 26, was constantly stealing from her parents, and was constantly in trouble. Despite this, my aunt was spoiled by my grandmother, and so were her kids. She had 3 kids from 3 different men, and her first husband was not one of them, if you know what I mean. Didn't matter what my aunt or her kids did, my grandmother would always jump to their defense. She never had time for my mom and her kids, unless it was to get something from us. The only reason my mom would visit her was because she loved my grandfather. My grandfather passed away in 2004, and a few months after, my nan decided to write up a new will. My mother and my aunt were both present for it when she signed it, so they knew what was in it. It made it so that when she passed away, her home would be sold and the money split 25% each to my mom and aunt, and the remaining 50% would go evenly to the grandkids. At the time, the home was worth more than £500,000, so it would be a nice little inheritance, but nothing life-changing. In 2010, my mom died after an accident and did not have a current will in place. As she no longer had her business and was renting a house, she didn't have anything of much monetary value. The only thing she was concerned about was what would be done at her funeral should she have passed away, but had told me everything she wanted. The music, the flowers, the coffin color, and even what people were to wear at the funeral. She wanted people to wear bright, warm colors. So, when she passed, my aunt and Nan took over all the arrangements and tried to undo all the things I'd told them. The songs were going to be songs I knew Mom didn't like, the flowers were all the wrong colors, and they picked a hideous coffin. With the help of my siblings, we were able to change a few of the things back to what they were supposed to be. But the coffin wouldn't be changed for some reason, and my Nan refused to let people come dressed as clowns, so it was all black. It was frustrating. After the funeral, my Nan had her will changed. My siblings and I were told by our aunt that she didn't have any involvement with the writing of the will, and our Nan told us that she changed it so that Mom's share would go to her kids instead. All good, we thought. After Mom passed away, my Nan just stopped talking about my mom. At first, we thought it was because she was still recovering from losing her daughter, but even 5 years after Mom passed, she still wouldn't talk about her. Even if you brought up a story about Mom, Nan would very obviously try and change the subject, usually about how hard my aunt and her crappy kids had it. And if you went to talk to her about your own problems, she would somehow bring it back to my aunt. I had suffered a mental breakdown after my mom's death, so you can imagine how much it hurt to hear, well, X has had it so much worse. In 2016, my Nan passed away. She had written down what she wanted to be done for her funeral, and it was basically all the same things she had picked out for my mom's funeral, even the music to be played. I don't know why she tried to have a dress rehearsal funeral using my mom as the stand-in, but it was obvious that's what she was trying to do. So, after a couple of months, our siblings and I were waiting to hear about the will reading, and my aunt kept telling me, oh, it'll be another month before we can do the reading. I didn't mind. I wasn't fussed about the money, to be honest. But my oldest brother was hoping to use the money to pay for a honeymoon for him and his then fiancée, and my younger brother was about to start uni, so it would be a hell of a help. Eventually, my dad bumped into the solicitor my grandmother had used to deal with her will and asked what was happening. The solicitor let slip that the will had already been read and that it left everything to my aunt. When my dad questioned this, the solicitor told him that my aunt had been present when the will was written, despite promising that she had nothing to do with it. When confronted, my aunt initially tried to deny, but eventually admitted to lying to all of us. She showed us the will, and it confirmed what we already knew. The house and all its contents were now my aunt's. This included my granddad's war medals. He fought in the Second World War. When I told her that he had promised them to me before he died, she said, well, unless you have it in writing, you'll have nothing in this house. Anyway, I already gave them to Clive. My heart sank. Clive, not his real name obviously, was her eldest son and the dictionary definition of a duck-up. He'd been in and out of prison for stealing and dealing drugs. I knew that the moment that prick had got his hands on my granddad's medals, they would have been sold off. We looked into taking her to court over the will, but everyone we spoke to said that we probably wouldn't get anything out of it. She immediately put the house up for sale at close to £750,000. She had pissed off too many people in our town, so she was going to sell the house and move closer to her daughter, who lives in a big city. An offer was made on the house, and she put down a deposit on a house near the big city. And I thought that was that. Here's where karma comes into play. The people who wanted my nan's house had a survey done on the house to see if there were issues. And oh boy, were there. Turns out that the land the house was built on was way too soft for the type of house it was, and it was sinking. It had sunk about 2 centimeters in the 40-plus years my nan and her granddad had lived there, but the sinking was accelerating to 1 centimeter per year. This meant that within the next 3 years, the house would need some serious work or to be knocked down. The new value of the house? £60,000. The buyers immediately pulled out, having not even put down a deposit. She couldn't buy her new house, but still had to pay the deposit on it. And while this was happening, she let Clive move in with her into her house that she rented from the council. He wasn't allowed to live in any of the council houses because he had trashed every single one he'd ever been given. Someone reported this, and she was kicked out of her home. She was forced to move into my nan's old home as she couldn't live anywhere else. So there she is, living in a crumbling house with her craphead son and her partner. She was stuck there for 2 years. Every time I saw her, she would try and start talking to me, and I would just ignore her and walk off. One time, as I was walking away, she screamed, "Your mother deserved to die for having an artard like you," in the middle of a busy street. Someone reported her to the police, and she had an official warning from them and was ridiculed on Facebook. Every time I saw her after that, she looked more and more miserable. Eventually, she sold the house for something like £85,000 and moved in with her daughter in the big city. I lost contact with her and her kids after this. I thought karma had been issued. Oh, but karma still wasn't done with her. I bumped into one of her former friends and she told me what happened after she left our town. She moved into her daughter's home, let's call her Sue, but they only had a 3-bedroom house and 3 kids. My aunt and her partner had to live in the smallest room in the house while my aunt looked for a job and a home to rent. Even with £85,000, she couldn't afford a home anywhere. After about a month, my aunt's partner ran off after emptying her account. She was left stranded in Sue's house, not contributing anything because all the money she makes goes into bingo. Eventually, Sue and my aunt get into a screaming match, and my aunt said something along the lines of, "I should have aborted you." Sue immediately kicked her out of her house. So, again, there's my aunt, in a city where she knows nobody, no money, no home, and the last bridge she had is a smoldering wreck. Last anyone has heard, she was living in a caravan in the roughest part of the city, and she can no longer work because she's suffering early onset arthritis and can no longer move her hands. I know I shouldn't get joy out of something like this happening to another person, but it does bring me some peace as to what happened. The next story is titled, HOA Takes Legal Action Against Me for Owning a Life-Saving Service Dog They Deemed Illegal. I successfully defended myself in court. I never thought I would need a service dog, but after being diagnosed with a seizure disorder, my life changed. My Great Dane became my companion, my protector, and my savior. He was trained to help me during my seizures, and he never left my side. I named him Max, and he was more than just a pet, he was a lifeline. Max and I loved to fish off the pier near our house. He would sit beside me and watch the water, and I would enjoy the peacefulness of the outdoors. But one day, as we were fishing, disaster struck. I had a seizure and almost fell into the water. Max was there to save me. He grabbed me by the back of my shirt and pulled me to safety. I owed my life to him, and I couldn't imagine going anywhere without him. However, our peaceful life was disrupted when the HOA started harassing me. They claimed that Max was an illegal service dog because he was over their 30-pound weight limit. Despite the fact that he was certified and wore a vest indicating his status, they scheduled a court date to have us removed from the area. I knew I had to fight back. I researched ADA laws and gathered all the necessary documents to prove that Max was a legitimate service animal. I showed up to court with Max by my side, and I was ready to take down the HOA. They tried to argue that Max didn't look like a service dog and that I didn't look disabled, but I didn't let their ignorance get to me. I presented all the evidence, including ADA laws stating that any breed of dog can be a service dog as long as it can perform the necessary tasks. In the end, I won the case. The HOA were ordered to leave me and Max alone, and were warned of the consequences of violating ADA laws. It felt like a major victory for me and other service dog owners who faced discrimination. Max and I were able to enjoy our neighborhood once again. However, the victory was short-lived. A few weeks after the court case, I was walking Max around the neighborhood when I noticed that he was limping. I immediately took him to the vet, and the diagnosis was heartbreaking. Max had torn his ACL and would need surgery. The cost was going to be expensive, but I couldn't let Max suffer. He had saved my life, and I had to save his. I started a GoFundMe page to raise money for Max's surgery. The response was overwhelming. People from all over the world donated money, shared the link, and left messages of support. It was amazing to see how much love there was for Max and me. The surgery was a success, and Max was on the road to recovery. However, the HOA was not done with us. They started sending letters again, claiming that Max was a disturbance to the neighborhood and that we were causing problems. I couldn't believe it. After everything we had been through, they still didn't understand the importance of service dogs. This time, I didn't want to go to court. I wanted to solve the issue without getting lawyers involved. So, I invited the members of the HOA to a meeting. I brought Max with me, and I showed them how important he was to me. I explained how he had saved my life and how he was more than just a pet. He was a service dog, and he deserved to be treated with respect. To my surprise, the members of the HOA were open to hearing my story. They listened to my concerns and my reasons for having Max with me. They even apologized for their previous behavior and promised to be more accommodating in the future. It was a huge relief to know that we could all coexist peacefully. Max and I continued to live in the neighborhood without any issues. We enjoyed our walks, our fishing trips, and our quiet moments together. The support we received during the GoFundMe campaign showed us that there were still people in the world who believed in the power of love and compassion. As time went on, I started to notice that there were more service dogs in the neighborhood. People with disabilities had started to feel more comfortable bringing their dogs with them, knowing that they were protected by the law. It was a small victory, but it was one that made me proud. Years passed, and Max started to age. His fur turned gray, and his movements became slower. I knew that our time together was limited, but I tried not to think about it. Then one day, Max had another seizure. This one was different. It was longer, and he didn't seem to recover as quickly. I knew that something was wrong. I rushed him to the vet, but it was too late. Max had passed away from a heart attack. I was devastated. He had been with me through so much, and I couldn't imagine life without him. I missed his gentle presence, his wagging tail, and his calming energy. But I knew that Max's legacy would live on. He had shown me the power of resilience, the importance of standing up for what I believed in, and the love that a dog can give. I started a foundation in Max's name to help other service dogs and their owners. We raised money for dog vests, training, and medical bills. It was a way to honor Max and all that he had done for me. The foundation grew over the years, and I met so many wonderful people and dogs along the way. I even got another service dog, a golden retriever named Lily. She was different from Max, but she was just as loving and loyal. Together, we continued to fight for the rights of service dogs and their owners, spreading the message of love and compassion that Max had taught us. In the end, I knew that Max was always with me, guiding me and protecting me. He had been my hero, my friend, and my family, and I was grateful for every moment we had together. The last story is titled, Entitled Neighbor Wants Her Kids in My Garden. So glad to have found this subreddit because I have a legit crazy neighbor with boundary issues. I, 29F, don't have any kids, but have my younger sister, 16, living with me for around 10 years, and we have a trampoline still in our back garden from when she was younger. Neighbor to the left of me has 4 kids and moved in a year ago. 2 weeks ago, Glasgow started getting really good weather, so the kids have been out playing constantly. Not an issue. They asked if I could let the kids use the trampoline one day, so I was like, sure, but only for a bit because I have friends coming over for some drinks. 7 p.m. comes, I ask them to go home because my 5 friends have shown up and we're gonna be drinking. Cue the crying, they leave the garden upset, but hey, that's not my issue. They've been on it for 3 hours at this point. Their mom pops her head out of her bedroom window and asks if they can stay in the garden longer. No? I'm not your babysitter. She's annoyed, but drops it. Last week, I come home from some shopping and to my surprise, find all 4 of the kids in the garden, plus their younger cousin. Ask them to leave. Tell them they can't just come into my garden without me there, and they didn't even ask. They refuse to leave, so I shout up at their mom and tell her to get them out of the garden. She says, let them play for a bit, you don't even use it. Okay, but still, not your garden? Eventually, we get into an argument and they leave. She's pissed off and shouting, saying I'm being a Karen and I should let them in. I tell her not to ask again because the answer will be no. This happened again the day after, all 4 kids plus their cousin waiting till I moved the car from the drive and heading straight into the garden. So, I wake up this morning. I've since put a lock on the trampoline, just a small one on the mesh safety enclosure to stop them opening it up, cause I'm petty as fuck. Plus, it's Saturday. I'm not working today, it's my day off, and I want a long lie. But no, neighbor decides that at 9 a.m. this morning her kids are being fired straight out that house with breakfast bars and a bottle of water, and they head straight into the garden. So I can hear them from my window. I look out and tell them to leave. By the time I get downstairs, Mom has descended from her house and is trying to climb the fence between our gardens, shouting about how I used to let them use it, and she's going to call the police for hitting her kids. Great. You do that. I'll be sure to show them the Ring camera footage, which coincidentally also has footage of your husband picking the lock open so your brats can use the trampoline. So long story short, entitled mother sends her kids into my garden repeatedly even after being told not to, calls police on me for harassment and hitting her kids, and ends up getting her own husband arrested for theft and housebreaking and criminal damage. Suck it, idiot. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.